comes.
Got it.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life. At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, you know we're covering all the home teams. New Orleans Saints, LSU Tigers, New Orleans Pelicans. We'll get into some Tulane and LSU as far as the basketball goes as well. If we have some time this evening, we got a great panel as always. Jay Hardgrave of ESPN 100.3, part of the Sports Hangover. Marlon Favorite from inside the trenches, former LSU Tiger in the house. We'll do it all with those guys tonight on the panel. Gentlemen, welcome to the show as always. Always like to start off letting folks know a little bit about what you guys are involved in. We'll start with you, Jay. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm with ESPN New Orleans 100.3 FM, the flagship station of the New Orleans Pelicans. With the Sports Hangover with Gus Cattengill and do a little work with the Pelicans pregame show.
Beautiful. And, of course, you're doing a great job, as always.
Appreciate it.
Marlon, always good. Marlon, you're everywhere, man. I mean everywhere. You know, LSU Sports Network, you're on radio shows all day long. I enjoy listening to you. You got your own podcast as well. Every time I turn around, you're on TV. Tell the folks about everything you're involved in.
Well, you can definitely check me out on the iHeartRadio app or iTunes, Inside the Trenches podcast. A little bit of NFL Network, LSU Sports Network during the football season. And I'm with my guys Jay and Gus Mondays and Fridays on Sports Hangover as well. And you can catch me over on Double D Store, Show Hard in the Paint Mondays and Fridays.
That's right. David Grubb doing a great job. Y'all have y'all on together a while back, and y'all do a great mix as well there. Guys, let's start off with the Tigers. We'll start off on the football side, and then we'll kind of morph into basketball a little bit later on. First of all, some really great news for the city, some great news for LSU fans that maybe don't get a chance to go to Baton Rouge. The Sugar Bowl announced on Tuesday that the city of New Orleans will host a kickoff game. The kickoff games in a lot of cases have always been in Atlanta, Houston, other places, but it's going to be here in New Orleans in the Dome in 2022, and LSU is going to play Florida State University. It'll be Labor Day weekend, September the 4th, 2022. That'll be followed by a game the following season in 2023, September the 3rd, 2023, in which Florida State and LSU will play, but they'll play in Orlando, and it'll be at Camping Ground Stadium. And I just love this. I believe that LSU is in a position now where they're going to continue to ascend, even if maybe it might be not the year we expect coming out off a national championship, but I think Rose got the program in the right direction. We would think that FSU would start to kind of turn things around as well, but these are two storied programs that are going to be involved in this opening game. It's here in the city. It's Labor Day weekend. It's more tourists are going to come to town, and of course, it gives LSU fans a chance to be in the dome, a renovated dome, to be able to see the Tigers play.
I think it's huge. I'm with you. I think this is a great move for LSU to be able to recruit in cities that you normally don't get to play a home game in. I know a lot of fans say, hey, we're losing a home game. I don't care. You get to go to Florida. You get to, as in past years, going to Texas, Atlanta, to get recruiting hotbeds of the United States. I think this is a recruiting bonanza. And this guy's not going to remember it, but he's too young. But you talked about the historical, games that we play
Right.
with Florida.
Oh.
Who can forget the Orange Bowl,
yeah.
literally,
Right.
when there were so many oranges thrown on the
Right.
field in Tiger Stadium.
right.
We haven't played Florida State in a long time, and I think you're right. I think Florida State is going to be headed back in the right direction. A lot of people said that when Jimbo Fisher left that program, he left the cupboards bare.
He did.
And Willie Taggart has brought in some talent. Unfortunately, he didn't get enough time to finish the job. But I think they're headed in the right direction, and I think these are going to be two great games.
Right, and of course, again, we're in 2020 now, so it's a couple years from now. We'll see how that program goes. Marlon, you've been there. You're an LSU Tiger. What does this mean to you as a New Orleanian? What does it mean to the program and to the players?
Well, it means a lot because Florida State has a lot of tradition with them. I just always think, oh, every time I think. So that type of tradition and a time frame as well. You have 2022, so that'll give Florida State enough time to regroup, get their recruiting up to play a game like this against an LSU team. In my opinion, at that time, is probably going to be still riding high
Yes.
in 2022. So I like it. I know UCLA will be popping up on the schedule soon, and bringing more of the other, bringing in other Power 5 schools that are, traditionally good.
Right, now, from a Tiger standpoint, from a guy that has played the game for LSU, what do these games mean when you're in the opening game of the season, you're in one of these kickoff classics? What does that mean to the players and to the program?
It's like a pre-bowl game, right? The type of hype behind it. You bring in two programs like this on a weekend like Labor Day weekend. Football season is just kicking off. It's a lot of hype. A lot of hype in the game. A game that you play up in, right? Because a lot of scouts are going to be watching. A lot of talent on both sides of the ball. So this is one of those games. I wish I'd have played against Florida State, just to be honest with you.
Right.
I mean, we played some classic SEC games, but we always wanted to play like a Florida State or a USC. You go across the NFL and you get teammates from those different schools. Oh, who would have played LSU? Who would have took y'all out? And, you get into that conversation, and it's like, oh, no, brother. We wish we would have played it. So now it's cool to hear that, the kids that are going to be recruiting, going to LSU in the years to come, and the guys that are freshmen and sophomores, freshmen and sophomores now, have an opportunity to play.
There's a school of thought with some institutions that they would rather start off with a cupcake and kind of get their sea legs under them, before they start to get into tougher competition. Based on just the tradition of the schools, you would think, you're not starting off with a cupcake with Florida State. The difference from a football player standpoint of coming up against a team that you got to give your game to be able to beat them, or against a team that you're probably only going to play a half.
Well, I think the teams that you only have to play a half, those games aren't as exciting as the ones you have to play, and to play it this early, right? That's starting it off right now. But if you look at LSU in the last few years, especially under Coach Ed Ogeron, he's not shying away from a big opener up against Miami or opening up against Texas. Texas opened season at 9. So I think that's the direction this program's going. I was hosting a show for David Grubbs, and I was talking to Verge Allsbury, and he talked about how, we're being very strategic on how we're putting these schedules together.
Right. Great interview, by the way. I heard that interview. That was a great interview by you. Let's talk a bit about Bo Pelini. Named the defensive coordinator, a guy that once was the defensive coordinator at LSU. There are some Tiger fans out there, a little bit lukewarm on it. Again, he's a proven defensive coordinator in my mind, and he's a guy that at the end of the day, you have to give Ed Ogeron the latitude to be able to hire the coaches he feels comfortable with. Your thoughts on Pelini, and then we'll kind of get into the schematics of it all.
I love the hire. He's always been one of the greatest defensive minds in the game, even before Dave Aranda came on the scene. Pelini at Nebraska, his defenses has always been very difficult to score on. He's that high-intensity guy. It's different from Aranda. There'll be some adjustments for the players because they're used to Dave Aranda being a little bit more easygoing.
Yes.
Pelini's a little bit more in your face. And I think it's probably the best thing. You never want to bring in the same coach. You want to change the personality a little bit. I think it's a great hire, and he's already proven himself here. He's familiar with the area. He's got the name. He's going to do great in recruiting, and I think it was a great hire. And you're right. Ed has earned that right of what he has done. I took a lot of heat for this. When they hired Ed, I said, if 5 years we'll win a national championship. Never dreaming he was going to do it in 3 and raise the bar to what he has raised it to. He's going to get a lot of head coaches fired because everybody's going to be looking at their coaches saying, why can't you do what Ed Orgeron's doing over at LSU?
Great point. Your thoughts on Pelini?
Oh, it's my boy, man. I love Coach Pelini. Played for him for 3 seasons at LSU.
That's right.
We won a national championship, as you guys mentioned, in 2007. But, Jay, you brought up a really cool point about Pelini. He's reserved at times, but he'll get in your face and get you fired up. And it's not to down you, but to bring you up. And I can just envision just talking to Coach Ed Orgeron over the last few years, he probably would love to work with Bo Pelini. So now to have that opportunity, because, okay, Aranda, he respected Coach Dave Aranda and what he did in his defense, but in that type of defense, linebackers strive. They really get off. In a Bo Pelini defense, hello somebody, take him inside the trenches, baby. The defensive line's going to eat very well. I saw DeAndre Anthony had tweeted out, man, been looking forward to putting my hand in the dirt. And things like this, getting that energy from some of the players who are going to be projected starters says a lot, man. But I love playing for Coach Pelini.
Because you had the unique opportunity to play for Coach Pelini, tell the audience a little bit about what it is to play for Coach Pelini. Again, we see him on the sidelines, as you mentioned, animated, in your face. Some say that today's athlete, you can't do that with. Football's football, right? Tell us a little bit from a player standpoint, playing for Pelini, how is it?
I loved it. I really did. He's a player's coach. I can remember at times our practices used to be long under Coach Miles. He'll give us breaks on our legs just to kind of keep us fresh. And he always meets you where you are, right? I can remember Coach Pelini coming up to me before certain games. Hey, Marlon, would you like it if I kind of cheat you at a G position on this one as opposed to a shade? So he'll meet you where you're at. You know what, Coach? I watched a little bit of film, and he'll wait till after you watch the film to get your thoughts. Even during the game, like his throughout the game adjustments are good, and just a very smart, hard-nosed defensive coach. For all intents and purposes, he's a national championship coach on defense. We know that our defense, I mean, me, Glenn, Tyson, and all of us, we're blessed forever because we were part of 2 really good defensive lines, #1 in the country each year. So, you know, for him to really – defensive linemen are going to love this guy. So the guys that are coming in, the Jaquelin Roys of the world, are going to love playing for him.
Well, and to your point, when you look at the number of defensive linemen that Bo Pelini put into the pros at LSU and throughout his career, guys that play defensive line are going to want to play for him. Schematically, the difference between what we saw under a Dave Aranda as opposed to what we're going to see with a Bo Pelini.
Well, from a schematic standpoint, we'll start in the base defense. Bo's more of a 4-3, whereas Dave Aranda ran a 3-4. You'll see mixtures of that. Technically, if you were to ask me, looking over the years working with him, he's more of a multi-D guy. It's times where we'll go into what's called the Noki package, where it's 3 down linemen. You'll pull out, one of your that's usually me, the defensive lineman that's not as athletic, the one more of the run stopper. Hello now, watch out there now. And you bring him in and bring in a Raheem Alim or someone who's a little more faster off the edge. He would mix it up like that. But most importantly, we won the game up front a lot. My linebackers loved us. Derry Beckwith, I think, and Ali Highsmith. You know, Kelvin Shepard, guys later on I played in my later years with, they really loved the fact that, because it's a one-gap deal, right? So you can really take off and sometimes shoot your gap if you want to. This defense, the Dave Aranda's defense, you basically the linemen were there just to hold up the offensive linemen where the linebackers flew around, which is fine. It worked. You got Tyler Shelvins in the world, and it's a national champion defense as well. So I think this is more Ed, though. This is more Coach Ed Orgeron. He's more of this type of defense.
Pelini as a recruiter, since you were around him, was he a good recruiter, or is he a guy that's going to let others recruit and he's going to coach the guys that come in?
I think he's a role player more with that. I didn't get recruited by that staff. We had Saban, and then those guys were recruiters. But he's a good coach. I guess the guys like the Drake Nevises of the world, just talking to them, they just thought he's a nice coach. He's a really nice guy, and he's looking out for you. Like, that's what I like about it. You don't catch that a lot in this business where coaches really go over and beyond for the players. So it'll be interesting to see him. He's more vocal than Dave Aranda.
Yes.
He's definitely more vocal. Yes. So my boy been in his zone, you heard me?
No doubt. Your thoughts schematically on going from, again, as Marlon put it, more of a 3-4 to a 4-3, even though, as he mentioned, Bo does do multiple defenses.
Well, he's a great defensive coach, and all great coaches will adjust to the talent that they have.
True.
I don't think he's
I agree
going to
with
try
that.
to fit a square peg into a round hole. I think if he doesn't have the people to play his defense, I think he'll make the adjustments early. So I don't think you're going to see initially out the gates, you'll see too many changes. I think once recruiting comes in and then he gets his people in, I think that's when you'll see a little bit more of a shift. Did he play a lot of 3-4s?
Not a lot, more for pass situations. So we
may be
would
wrong
bring
there.
in a little bit more of that. It wasn't, we were never in a situation where we had the 2 gap. It was mainly, and now this would happen a lot, me and Glenn or Al Woods or whoever, Ricky Jean Francois, whoever I was rotating in, Charles Alexander, those guys, we would flip. Like, Coach liked me to be more at the shade, the nose, whereas Glenn and Al and Ricky and those guys, he liked them at the 3. So you'll see flipping happen a lot, especially with the big Tyler Shelvin in the middle.
Yeah. Right.
The beef that we have coming, he's going to love this group of guys.
Scott Linehan is the new passing coordinator. He's again a former pro coach. Hadn't really coached in college since 2001. That's a long time to be out of the college game. His forte is quarterbacks. When you look at what Joe Brady did for LSU in terms of bringing the Saints offense over, but he worked with the wide receivers more. It'll be interesting to see ultimately, again, what Linehan is going to do in terms of what will be his quote-unquote position group. But do you like the hire? Do you like the hire of a guy that has pro pedigree and has some college experience, but really pro pedigree coming in, a guy that has worked with the quarterbacks he's worked with, Prescott, Stafford, Romo, those type of guys?
Well, I'm optimistic about the hire. I thought his time at Dallas, he did an exceptional job.
Were
With
you
Dak
there with
Prescott.
him at Dallas?
I wasn't there with him at Dallas at all. I just followed. I love my Saints.
Right.
I love y'all, baby. I'm from here, but as a kid, I grew up watching Dallas. So in my adult years, Jamie messed with me just all the time. I'll keep up with them. But I did watch Dak Prescott go from Mississippi State and transfer over to this game pretty well in his first few years. Now, the team didn't do all that hot, right? But I do think there's some upside with this. And the key piece to this, I like the hire because I like Coach Ed Orgeron. I think what he's been doing lately in terms of hires has been great, right? Bringing in, when Coach Meatball got hurt last year, bringing in Bill Johnson fresh out of the Super Bowl with the Rams, right? I had a chance to play with him with the Saints, and just bringing in those winning coaches. A lot of Saints guys, like 3 guys that was on the staff from the Saints, even from the special team games and Coach McMahon. But at the very end of the day, I trust the hire. I do know that quarterbacks and passing game is something that Scott Langling excels in, but the man's still here, man. The Wizard, Coach Steve Ensminger. So I think with that key piece in, we're fine. We'll be fine.
Your thoughts on Scott Linehan?
I love the hire. He was a quarterback at Idaho, and he played under Dennis Erickson.
Okay.
And Dennis Erickson was a coach who was throwing the ball before it was popular to be throwing the football. So he that was his mentor in Dennis Erickson. In the NFL, he took a lot of heat for his stint with the Rams, but what do they always say? Don't be the guy that replaces the legend, be the guy that replaces the guy who replaced the legend.
Exactly.
He tried to take over the Rams when Kurt Warner left and they brought in Mark Bulger. Didn't exactly work out. But his job, you talked about Stafford. Calvin Johnson was there. They were setting records when he was the offense coordinator there. He, I think, is a great hire. It gives you the NFL flavor. The one thing I think that most fans have completely missed is that they think that since Joe Brady is gone, that he has a patent on all of those plays and he packed them up in his bag and he's taking them with him. Steve Ensminger learned all of those plays. He learned the system of what Brady was doing. Steve Ensminger is an incredibly intelligent offensive coordinator. When he was at Texas A&M, he was a hot commodity, the guy, offensive coordinator. Steve Ensminger knows what he's doing. He can still do all of the things that Joe Brady did, and now he's got another set of eyes in Scott Linehan, who I have always been a big fan of. So I think this offense is going to be, I don't expect them to do what they did last year.
Right.
You're not going to replace Burrow. But I think I'd like to see this team come out with the stable of running backs that they have, run the ball a lot more, because now you're going to have teams on their heels. They're expecting Burrow. Now you bring in Brennan, and now we're going to run the ball a little bit more at you.
Your thoughts on Brennan for next year?
I'm concerned about his confidence level.
Right.
That was the one thing. I think he's got the mechanics. I think he's got the tools. But I just didn't see that swashbuckler that you have with Joe Burrow. Burrow's going out there and I don't care what you're going to do. Put your 11 guys out there. I'm going to pick you apart. I don't think Brennan is that guy. I think he can be successful, but I think you're going to have that running game. That's why I want to see him come out and run the football, because if you don't expect him to throw the ball 45 times, maybe throw it 30, I think you're still going to have some success.
Right. You have a unique opportunity as a former player to be invited to practice, to see things that the media never sees. Miles Brennan, again, we only know Miles Brennan from the short time that we've seen him in maybe a spring game or, again, in mop-up duty. Your thoughts on Miles Brennan?
Well, I think you said something, a confidence thing. That's a question mark, right? Because we did see this kid kind of go through the ringer, come in on the high end, get caught. You know, he did get tossed out there the year with Danny Elling, and we did see some potential there. So it's potential there with him, but it's his job to lose as well, right? Because you have talent coming in. Max Johnson, Brad Johnson's son, he has talent. I watched his highlight tape about a week ago. Looks really well. T.J. Finley, a Hank Tierney product, baby. Shouts out to Coach Hank out there in Ponchatoula, Louisiana, right? He looks really good. Tall, has the size, has the cannon. So if my thing is, and I think I may have spoke with this about Jay a couple weeks ago, if he comes in and he understands that this is my position, he comes in with that Joe Burrow confidence. Right. He has it, man, because he has a good arm. Seeing him at practice, his ball is exceptional. We just only had a chance to see him get in these reps with the game. So a better defense with Coach Bo Pelini, or a solid running game, you'll give him a chance to build that confidence. But if he wins the job in the spring, look out, Tiger fans. I think we'll have another great year.
I think the key for him is to be Miles Brennan. Don't try to be Joe Burrow.
I would agree with that. Yeah, no doubt about it. And because, again, coming out of high school, he was one of the top dual threat quarterbacks. He's got a rocket of an arm. You talked about that. He seems to be fairly accurate. The knock on him coming out of St. Stanislaus was not enough weight. He's gotten the weight room. He's built his body up at this point. And he's sat long enough now that, again, he should have a grasp of what's going on. He was in this offense last year, so he's not coming into it, again, like a freshman would, where they have no clue on what they're doing. He's got to understand the concepts here. So, again, at this point, I mean, he's the best. Right now, unless they go after a grad transfer, he's the best option they have. And that's my question. Do they go after a grad transfer? They have 3 scholarships left. What do they do with those 3 scholarships?
I don't think they're going to go after a quarterback, because I think if they were, they would have gone after De'Aaron Young from Houston.
Okay.
And all things are pointing that he's going to Arkansas. So I think that one's off the table. I think they would have made the move because I think they would have hit their pick of the quarterbacks in that system. So I don't think one of those are going to be. Look, I agree with Marlon. What I saw from him when he went out against Alabama as a freshman, I was pleased with. He didn't look like a deer in the headlight. If you can go out and play against Alabama when they were in their heyday, and you can handle it, I think it is Miles Brennan's job to lose, and I think he will be the starting quarterback beginning of the year. I think he'll have a good year too.
Yeah.
Spring, man. Right. Spring ball. I think 1 or 2 of those scholarships will sit there at the end of spring ball, just in case the coaching staff don't see what they want to see.
Much like it happened to Burrow, right?
Just like it happened, yeah. He came in, and nothing. I thought Lowell Narcisse and Justin McMillan, as we've seen, had successful careers at other schools.
Yes.
But Joe Burrow was really that good. Who was Joe Burrow's roommate on the road these LSU games? Miles Brennan. So to be able to be around and see how he prepared before games. Now I would pick up those things, because there's no reinventing the wheel. Preparation is key. This kid put a lot of time in the film study and just really breaking down stuff with the coaching staff to guide him. I think he'll do fine. He's been patient too. Right. It's been.
No, he has been. He could have transferred. Look, a lot of kids today, they have no patience. If they're not in by the second year, at that point they're heading somewhere else to try to get a starting job, especially the way things are now. Yeah. Where again, if you put the time in the classroom, you could become a graduate transfer and you don't have to sit out that year. And that obviously helps anybody that wants to be able to transfer going forward. But he stuck it out. So again, he should have at least the opportunity to be the starter.
Yes.
And he's got to win, as you mentioned. He's got to win the job.
Got to win the job. Some talent that came in at that position.
Right.
Some
no
young
doubt
talent.
about it. Mentioned Max Johnson. Talk about Peter Parrish was there. You just mentioned Coach Tierney and
T.J. Finley.
T.J. Finley coming out of Ponchatoula. A lot of talent coming in LSU. All right, tonight Marvin Favorite of Inside the Trenches podcast. Also Jay Hardgrave of ESPN 100.3 are our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We take a quick break. We come back. We'll dive into some Saints. We'll get into some Pelicans. If we have time, we'll jump into some college basketball as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Don't go anywhere.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Jay Hardgrave of ESPN 100.3 and Marlon Favorite of Inside the Trenches. And Marlon's everywhere. You can catch his podcast on iHeart, but he's on radio shows, TV shows. I mean, he's everywhere, and a good reason why. He knows his stuff. All right, let's jump into some Saints, guys. And the big topic has been the quarterback position and what's going to happen going forward. Comments by Drew Brees saying that, he's going to make his decision soon. I think everybody believes he's coming back. Okay, whether it's going to be 1 or 2 years is up in the air. There's $21 million in dead money that's sitting out there right now. The Saints cannot afford him not to come back, honestly. The question is, again, how much of a contract he's going to demand going forward, and then again, how effective he's going to be going forward. Because at some point, we know the bottom drops out on older quarterbacks. Is that this year? Is it next year? What's the situation there? The other one is, and we'll get into it, is Taysom Hill coming out now saying he wants to be a starter in the NFL. That, again, he's a restricted free agent. Saints will have to put a tender on him. The way that Sean Payton spoke about the quarterback position and him, saying that the heir apparent for Drew Brees is in the building. Most people believe that, again, he's referring to Taysom Hill because most people believe that Teddy Bridgewater, after going 5-0 as a starter of this team, based on what he did in his career before the injury, is going to be probably the number one prospect at quarterback when it comes to free agency. He's going to get paid. He's going to have the pick of where he wants to go, and more than likely it's not going to be here in New Orleans unless there is some deal where he's told, look, Brees is leaving next year, you're our guy. I don't know if I see that happening. Let's take Brees first. Your thoughts on whether Brees comes back or not, and if he does, for how long?
I think Brees does come back. I think this will be his last year, though.
Okay.
Initially, I agreed with you. I thought Taysom Hill was going to, after the way the year played out, I thought Taysom Hill would be the guy that would replace him. I'm starting to have second thoughts about that. And the reason is I think they're either shopping Taysom Hill or it's a negotiating tactic. Mm-hmm. Because to say he's a franchise quarterback and then to have Taysom Hill come out right after that and say, I want to be a starting quarterback, it seems like they're trying to get a first-round pick for him. And if they do, they're going to sign Teddy Bridgewater and say, you're the backup and you're the heir apparent. I'm starting to think this is a negotiating ploy because if they don't get the first-round pick, and I don't think they will, it gives them leverage to go to Taysom and say, nobody wanted you. And look, people can say what they want. Negotiations and contracts are harsh.
Yes.
It's not nice. They'll tell you, hey, look, nobody wants you. You need to come back here, and we need to sign you. There's not a lot of money. You're trying to sign a lot of people. Von Bell. There's a lot of names that need to be re-signed, and not all of them are going to be re-signed.
Right.
So I think they're going to try to get Taysom Hill at a bargain price, but I just don't see somebody parting with a number one pick for Taysom Hill. I think Teddy Bridgewater, though, I'm starting to come back to Teddy, that he is going to come back for one more year as the backup and then take over.
Right. What are your thoughts, Marlon? You can start with Brees and then go right into Teddy and Taysom.
I will say this. My initial thoughts is this is even more intense than the Minnesota situation, which involved Teddy Bridgewater and Case Keenum, and I'm missing a guy. Sam Bradford. You have essentially 3 starting quarterbacks. Yep. We're in the same situation with New Orleans, except we have a Hall of Famer, the new Slash, and a guy who's rejuvenated his career in Teddy Bridgewater. So Jay's scenario sounds about right, and just paying attention to what's going on. The first round tender, right? They put that on him, and nobody bites on it. Okay, well, Taysom, nobody bit. This guy's signing bonus to Green Bay in 2017 was $5,000. Then he plays for New Orleans for a little bit over $400 and $500 this year. It's time for him to get paid. He's contributed to this team a lot. Right. So I understand his camp and where they're at with it. Like, hey, it's time for me to get paid, and he wants to be in New Orleans. Coach Payton and the rest, it's a tedious situation, but it's a beautiful situation to be in, because if someone does pick up Taysom Hill, now you get a first-round draft pick,
right.
and then you also have all kind of leverage, right? And then now it's easy. Hand Ferrario would do a nice little 1-year contract with Drew Brees, give it one more shot to get that Super Bowl run, and hand Ferrario on over to Teddy Bridgewater, who'll still be in his 20s, right? And he's talented. We saw that this year. So it's one of those situations. March 18th, it's going to be a real day come free agency. So we're going to hear more stories like this.
I see a scenario where you could even maybe sign Taysom Hill and trade him. Because this is the draft. There was one name when I saw Taysom Hill, the Sean Payton development of him. There was one name that jumped off the page at me, and that's Jalen Hurts out of Oklahoma. I thought he would be the next guy that somebody would try to do the same thing that the Saints have done with Taysom Hill. I'm going to throw another name at you that you may be able to get late rounds or even a free agent. How about Chase Forcade? Would Chase Forcade be a guy that could do a Taysom Hill role? So would the Saints maybe sign Taysom Hill, trade him, and then try to find a replacement? May not be able to do exactly the same thing Taysom Hill does, but now you're throwing another curveball. It gives you another off-speed pitch.
You know, and I talked about the same thing about the tender. And we talked about this show and we talked about the radio show. It is very unlike Sean Payton to be able to show his hand. And for him to come out and to say that he believes the heir apparent is in the building, that he believes that that Taysom Hill is a starting quarterback in the NFL, that again, giving these accolades to a guy that you're driving the price up on now. Okay, so now you're in a position where you have to put a first-round tender on him to probably hold on to him, because the other teams will probably part with a second or a third-round tender. Okay, then a first-round tender is a minimum of $4.5 million on a contract, okay, per year. So at that point, you've driven the price up on maybe what you would be paying him if ultimately he would come in as maybe a backup for you down the line. Remember, Teddy Bridgewater made $7 million as a backup last year on a one-year deal, but Teddy was a guy that, again, probably could have went to another team and probably could have had a chance to start. We know Miami wanted him to be the starter there. He turned them down. So I'm of the opinion that this is poker, that this is, again, Peyton saying, I'll take the chance. If I get a number 1 pick, I can utilize that to get weapons or to maybe draft a quarterback. Or if ultimately nobody bites, then I'm in a position of strength, because now I get to negotiate saying, as you said, nobody wanted me. Okay, nobody wanted you at that point, so then he stays in the slash role. Do either of you guys think he's a starting quarterback in the NFL?
No, I don't.
And I don't.
I don't either. He's a glorified running back. If you look at Cardell Stewart when he came out, he was a quarterback. He had he had that type of skill, the accuracy, and he had tons of time at that position as well. Taysom, he's the new Slash. He's by far one of the more interesting players in the NFL. But to commit to that, because whoever gets him, they're going to have to commit to that Saints offense, how they were running him. He has a strong arm, don't get me wrong, but we know what he does. He's more of that option run, I'm going to run you over. And you have to look at the value that he has and how they're using him. They use him on special teams. They use him at the wide receiver. They use him at running back, quarterback. I think that's what Coach Sean Payton likes. He wants a solid quarterback, but to be able to play the Taysom game with him.
In the NFL, it's easy to come off the bench when the game plan is based off of what Drew Brees does and Drew Brees' strengths. Marlon can attest, any defensive coordinator in the NFL, you give them 6 to 8 weeks of film, and they'll figure you out.
There's no doubt.
Once the defensive coordinators get the game plan for Taysom Hill as the starting quarterback, it's going to be a different story.
Absolutely.
Look at the Ravens. Lamar Jackson was the MVP. Look what happened in the playoffs. One defensive coordinator got him. Tennessee figured out how to stop him. This was a copycat league. Everyone now is going to. I'm be curious to see how Lamar Jackson works. You've got to be able to do it from the pocket.
And look, and it's a great point, because film's always the great equalizer, as we all know. Okay, and defensive coordinators will figure out a way to be able to, again, take away the strength of any player out there, especially if you're a quarterback. And again, we haven't seen Taysom Hill in a situation where he's a starter, he's out there, and teams have to prepare for him as a quarterback. And again, and that's to be the thing that may have teams shy away from him. Although some teams may say, look, this is the wave of the future, this type of quarterback, and they may go after him at that point. Teddy Bridgewater, go ahead.
The one thing that has shocked me with Taysom Hill, when he was at BYU, he was injured every
Every-
year as
every
a
year.
starting as a
Right.
starting quarterback.
Right.
It surprised me that he's been
Right.
as healthy as he's been since he's been
style
here.
of play.
But can he stand up to that NFL
Right.
beating 16
Right.
weeks?
I agree.
And the snaps too. I mean, because
Yeah.
once you're the starting quarterback, you're going to get all of the snaps. So the snaps as well.
And if you're a running quarterback, you're going to be exposed all the time. No,
Yes.
I would agree. So you guys both feel that if Teddy Bridgewater gets the word from Peyton or Breeze that he's only staying 1 year, that he foregoes going elsewhere and stays in New Orleans.
He likes it here,
Yes.
man. He
Right.
loves it. And I do think if that's the scenario, if that's the case, he'll stay because this is the job that he wants. He wants this job. That's why he could have went and gotten a start. It's not
he could've.
Taysom Hill wants to be a starting quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater wants to play for the New Orleans Saints. It's a good fit here. He's at the Edna Call football games, at the state championship, in the community. Just a great guy. In Miami, folks, they love it here. Mike McKenzie, he lives here.
Yeah.
You know, he's from Miami.
Yes,
You know, he goes
true.
back to the crib every once in a while, but this is home for him, and this city is infectious. You know,
Yes.
you know, everybody loves New Orleans, so he likes it here. But he do know that the clock is ticking.
Right.
You know, I'm north of 25 as opposed.
Right.
You know,
true.
So that plays a role. So I'll sit a year and then do a. Because they're going to do the
Right.
only way this works with we talked about this. It has to be a long-term
Right.
term
Right.
deal. It can't
Absolutely.
be another one and wait.
No.
It has to be a long-term
Long
deal.
term. And a point that you know that Breeze is walking away. That it's not going to be, well, one more year. No, at that point, it's already been, he's going on the retirement tour next year, and the reins being turned over to Teddy. You had a point?
Three things that I think bring him back. Number one, that you got 5 quarterbacks projected to go in the first round of the NFL. Number two, you look at what happened with Case Keenum. When he went to Washington last year, they drafted Dwayne Haskins and then turned the keys over to Dwayne Haskins. So with Teddy risked that he goes somewhere, signs, they draft somebody, and then turn it over to somebody else. You still got guys like Tom Brady, Cam Newton. The Bengals are now talking about trading Andy Dalton.
Right.
There's a lot of bodies out there. He knows he's the guy if he stays here behind Drew one more year.
Guys, a lot of talk about Kamara. What will happen with him? He is in the final year of his deal. Of course, he's going to demand big money. Is there an opportunity for him to maybe hold out this season, much like we saw what Michael Thomas do? Peyton has already come out and said that Ramshack is a priority for this team to sign him up long term. You've got a situation with Lattimore that's coming down the pike here. Got a lot of these young draft picks that have really turned out really well for the Saints that you now have to pay. You talked about Von Bell a little bit earlier. It's another guy you don't want to lose. What do you think happens with Kamara? Is he a guy that is here and going to be here long term? They're going to re-sign him, or is he a guy that ultimately may be traded during the draft or traded before the season? Because when you start trying to cut up the pie here, and you see how much money you have to pay to all these draft picks and all these players, that there may not be the kind of money that Kamara may be demanding on the open market.
I've got a scenario that I would love to see play out, and I know we talk about this every year at the draft, that the Saints maybe trade back, because there's a kid, and I know I'm going to light his face up when I say this, from down the road, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that would probably be in the second round. Could the Saints trade back out of the first round, pick up a couple of second-round picks, maybe pick up, a Grant Delpit and a Clyde Edwards-Helaire and trade Alvin Kamara? It's a possibility. I just think with the downtrend in production with him last year is concerning. Now, he may have been fighting injuries. The next question is, what is the asking price? What can you get for Kamara? I just think the way Clyde Edwards-Helaire can pass block and the way he can run the football, catch the football, I wonder if he wouldn't be a better fit in this offense with Drew Brees than Alvin Kamara.
Right.
Man, what do we start with this one? Alvin Kamara, I do think that his injuries barred him. I do think he played this season hurt. But you do look at what's New Orleans notorious for? Taking a guy later round, second, third, fourth, fifth round, it doesn't matter. Marcus Colston was what, seventh round?
Yes.
And really developing and building them as offensive weapons, offensive players. And Alvin Kamara falls right in. There's a guy that we got in the third round, if I'm not mistaken, out of Tennessee. Everyone slept on him, clearly first round talent, and he lit it up his first 2 years in New Orleans. He's on that year. I do think the value is much higher. I think if he tests the market, it's high for him because of what he can do in terms of going out and catching from out the receiver position, or, he's shown glimpses of being able to run in between the tackles. I was concerned about that with Mark Ingram being gone this season. So if you look at it from that perspective, the market does work for him. Do we see a franchise tag here?
Right. Well, I mean, the franchise tag, you figure what, maybe 10 million, 12 million, 11 million dollars a year?
Yeah,
I mean, are you willing to pay that kind of money for a running back? I mean, that's the question. I mean, is he looking for Zeke Elliott money? Is he looking for Gurley money at this point?
I think he might be looking for that.
That's the kind of money he's looking for, based on what the Saints have done historically. They walked away from Reggie Bush. They walked away from Mark Ingram. They've walked away from running backs because they felt they've always could be able to get a running back and be able to put him and mold him for what they want to do within this offense. Look, Kamara is a different cat.
He is.
Okay, and again, when he's not injured and he's healthy, he's a tough guy to be able to handle in this offense. But the question is, when you're trying to spread this money out, is he a priority over maybe a guy like a Lattimore or a Ramczyk, and can you sign all these guys?
I think there's two names, and you just brought up one of them, Todd Gurley, and the other one's Devontae Freeman from the
Right.
Falcons. 2 years ago, those guys were the darlings of the running backs in the NFL, and now both teams, the Falcons and the Rams, appear to be moving on from those guys. You see how quick the NFL is brutal on running backs. You see how quick it is on running backs. The longevity is not there. And I just wonder if the Saints, that thought has got to be crept into their mind that maybe we do move on.
Needs? Do you want to make a comment?
Oh, no, I'm with y'all. Y'all are on point. The Kamara deal is going to be it's going to be difficult.
Nobody wants to lose Kamara. But again, it's got to be at the right price here.
But that's
and
how
for
the
him,
Patriots-
as a running back, you need to get as much money as you can because the
Yeah.
longevity of
Yeah,
running back
that's true.
is very, very short.
It is.
You know?
That's how the Patriots have won Super Bowls,
Right.
trading guys before their contracts
It's the
came
truth.
up.
It's the truth. Guys, before we jump into Pelicans, top three positions the Saints need to go after either in free agency or the draft.
Wide receiver, linebacker, I'm going to go safety.
Okay.
Because I just think they move on from Marcus Williams.
Okay.
We're almost identical. We're almost twins. I go wide receiver, offensive guard, and safety. Right. I do, and I talked to Marcus Williams during the Super Bowl. He loves it here, and he knows that this is an important season. Do you draft a younger safety, to kind of mold him and work behind him, or do you reinvest in him next season?
Right. Or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
That's another one.
Who again could possibly play free safety for you down the line here as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. To me, the one of the keys are going to be, what are they going to do with Von Bell? Because I think Von Bell is a guy you got to bring back.
Yes.
They've had a history of letting safeties go too early and coming back to bite them. I mean, I was on the bandwagon to let both these guys go. I'm not going to pretend I didn't say it. Roman Harper and Malcolm Jenkins. They let them go, and what happened? They flourished in their with it was Carolina, Philadelphia, where they went. You don't want to do that with a Von Bell. You don't want to let a Von Bell go and end up being an All-Pro or a Pro Bowler somewhere else.
Kenny Vaccaro, he looked good in the playoffs.
There's another one, right? There's no doubt, and they've done that, at times. So we'll see what happens there, guys. Let's shift to the Pelicans, playing incredible basketball right now, and it's hard to anybody watches this show on an ongoing basis or listens to the radio show. It hasn't always been like that. Again, we know they started off 6-22. We know they lost 13 in a row. We know it's part of that 13-game losing streak as well as the 6-22 start. There were injuries that were a part of this, but also those guys didn't play quality basketball. They didn't try. They gave 100% every night. They lacked the energy and effort you need to win in the NBA consistently. But things have turned around now. Derek Favors has come back. He's really solidified the middle. What Zion has done with his energy and his ability, what he's done. You look at the former Los Angeles Lakers, how they have grown in a Pelican uniform. J.J. Redick, exactly what we thought he would be coming into New Orleans. Now they are in a tie for the 10th place with the San Antonio Spurs. They're 23-31. They're right behind Portland, which is 25-31. They're 6 games back in the loss column from Memphis. Right behind the Pelicans, though, a half a game back, it's Phoenix, who is, again, just kind of still in the mix here. They are 17-9 over their last 26 and 7-3 over their last 10. Guys, every game is a playoff game from this point forward, and it has been. But you got one more game tonight against Oklahoma City in the Smoothie King Center, and then it's the All-Star break. When you look at the team, I think 18 of the next 27 are against 17 of the next 27 are against Western Conference opponents. So you really control your own destiny in the second half of the season. And when you look at the schedule, it really softens up in the second half of the season as well. Pelicans are playing really good ball right now. What are your thoughts about where this team is now and your expectations as they get into the mythical part of the second season?
I love where they're sitting. Memphis does not, obviously that's the team that's got a pretty decent lead. They're about 5 games ahead of the Pelicans right now. You do hold a tiebreaker over them because you've won the first 3. You only get to play them one more time. But there's not a lot of veteran leadership on that Memphis team. So when it gets down to crunch time, I got the feeling they're going to give up some games. And
their schedule's much tougher than the Pelicans.
Much tougher. And so is San Antonio's, and
Yes.
so is Portland. Portland is playing, they've been playing lights out, but Portland cannot match up to the Pelicans.
No.
It just blows my mind that people were talking about trading Drew Holiday at the trade deadline. People want to call Kristaps Porzingis the unicorn.
Right.
Drew Holiday's the unicorn because Drew Holiday can do everything.
Right.
Drew Holiday can handle the ball. I know people get on him about his ball handling sometimes. He can shoot the ball, but most importantly, he's a lockdown defender. This team is not far off, Eric, from being a national champion. Not national champion. I'm still thinking about LSU.
Go Tigers.
A world championship contender.
Right.
Because, I brought this up on the radio the other day. Think about next year. Next year, you're going to have an overwhelming favorite in the Golden State Warriors when Steph Curry and Klay Thompson come back. And oh, by the way, they still got Draymond Green. Oh, by the way, they traded for Andrew Wiggins. And oh, by the way, they're probably sitting on the number 1 pick in the draft. Look how the Pelicans match up against them. When you have a Drew Holiday, Alonzo Ball, and a Josh Hart that can match up against those guards, who's going to guard Zion Williamson? That's a problem.
Yes.
Now, Draymond Green might be able to handle him, but now you're going to put Wiggins on Brandon Ingram. Now, all of a sudden, for the first time ever, the Pelicans can match up against the top teams in the league, and they have trouble matching up against Zion and the talent that we have.
True.
This team is loaded because every night somebody else can step forward and be that guy,
True.
and the rest of the guys are unselfish. Go ahead, it's your night tonight, Brandon. You go for 50. Drew's going to get 30 the next night. Zion's going to get 30. It's a team, and it's really coming together, and I've been very critical of Alvin Gentry. They've done a great job, that whole coaching staff.
They've definitely turned it around. Again, they didn't have the energy and effort early that they needed to win games. It may come back to bite them in terms of getting the 8th seed, but nobody can complain about the way they're playing right now. Well, what's your take on Pels right now?
I mean, I like them, man. I like a young team that can go out there and play with chemistry. If you look at Lonzo Ball, I always go Lorenzo. Lonzo Ball, he's killing it with the assists. I think he's averaging like 8 assists a game. Drew Holiday is averaging like a steal or 2 steals a game. Right. I do think you could probably use like 1 or 2 veteran leaders on the team, but you have to look at how Brandon Ingram rejuvenated his career.
Yes.
Had a 40-point game and was averaging like 27 points a game. So I do like the young energy on this team. I think if we'd have had a healthy Zion throughout the whole season, I do think we're in that 8 right now. He's really that type of player coming in as a rookie, like with guys like Michael Jordan, the performance he had as a rookie. You look at Karl Malone, how he came out as a rookie, and just how he's taking on this pressure as well. It's a lot of pressure for a 19-year-old. They're putting you on top of the world, putting all in. He's just taking it. He loves the city as well. So overall, my overall view on the Pels, I hope we can keep this team together. Right. We know that this year is just a growing pain year, shaping your team up. You're bringing another veteran with this young roster. I mean, sky's the limit.
Right. To your point, Derek Favors is a free agent next year, but the Pelicans do have his bird rights. Drew Holiday is in the last year of his deal, but there is a player option the following year if he wanted to stick around. All the young core is intact for the next 4 to 5 years in terms of the rights of the Pelicans with that young core. J.J. Redick is under a 2-year deal, so next year will be his last year of his deal, and he's getting a little bit up in age, although you wouldn't tell by the way he's playing right now. So to your point, they can keep the nucleus of this team together to grow along Zion. They're going to have to max out Brandon Ingram this year because they didn't pick up his player option. They did pick up the options for both Josh Hart and Lonzo Ball, so they have them for another couple seasons. So it'll be interesting to see again how they add to the puzzle here. And remember, You know, if they're in the lottery, then they have a chance at again the #1 overall pick, depending on again how the ping pong balls fall. If they're out, then again they get a chance to get a taste playoffs and get playoff experience for this young team that we expect to be in the playoffs next year. Even if they have to go to Los Angeles and play a Laker team, you know, and hopefully again give them a series. So I like where they're at. They're going to have cap room going forward, and yet I like the way Dave Griffin has built this team thus far.
Look, I'm all for the Lakers in the first round. Anthony Davis has to play the city that he kicked to the curb,
Right.
and LeBron James has to play the 3 kids that he kicked to the curb. I'm all for that. I want to see if LeBron and Anthony can stand up to the pressure, because all the pressure's on them. And the Pelicans, if they get to that 8 seed, which I think they will, they're playing with house money.
Right.
And they might pull the upset.
Yeah, they're playing very good basketball right now. Again, the only thing you hope is that, again, there's no injuries down the stretch, especially to a guy like Derek Favors. It's the really one part of their game right now that they don't have a legitimate, a solid backup. Jackson Hayes is trying. He's just too young right now. Yeah. And again, when you look at Okafor, he's just an offensive center. He can't rebound and he can't really defend. So again, that's a little bit of a hole there. But if Favors can stay healthy, I think they got a legitimate shot to really get into the playoffs. I like their chances based on what we've seen thus far and what we're seeing. More than anything else, the way they're playing. They're playing basketball the right way. You know, I think we knew they had talent, but they're finally playing together as a team.
They finally started getting a much better shot selection. Lonzo
Yes.
Ball earlier in the year was just shooting threes. Now he's letting the game come to him.
It's in the flow of the game.
The whole team is letting the game come
Yes.
to him, and they're not forcing things. And you're right, this is just great basketball to watch.
And they're playing in the paint now. Where
Yeah.
again,
Yes.
they were allergic to the paint before. They didn't want to get physical. Now that Zion has come back, now that Favors has come back, it's a much more physical basketball team. Again, when that ball touches the paint in some form or fashion, the Pelicans are a much better basketball team because it does open up the outside shot within the flow. Now, I like the Pelicans' chances, even though again they're 6 games out of the 8th seed in the loss column right now.
Right.
Guys, let's go to the phone lines, grab a couple calls. Let's start off with Greg in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. Just a question. I'd like you guys to discuss the cornerback position for the Saints. What do they do with Lattimore, Eli Apple, T.J. Robinson, and Janoris Jenkins? And I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks. You want to take it first?
Well, I think Janoris Jenkins, they can probably work on something with him. Maybe, well, I think he's coming up on his option year, so maybe do something.
1 year, $10 million. They got him for one more season.
They got him for one more season, so I think you could just kind of see him have a full season. The next person I will probably talk about is Eli Apple. Now his situation is because he's a unrestricted free agent this year. So do you want to go that route? He's first round talent. He's shown some inconsistency at times, but for the most part, he's a solid corner. And then you have Marshawn Lattimore. He's in the conversation with Alvin, Mike T, and the rest of those guys.
He's going to get paid.
He's going to get paid. He's your lockdown corner for the future. Last season, I think he's been for the most part consistent. I think early on in the season last year he started off slow, but the big question mark out of that cornerback position. Oh, P.J. Williams is another one who's undrafted. Yeah, and what are you going to do with those two guys?
Right, that's the biggest question. Do they re-sign him? Especially Patrick Robinson with his contract at this point, more than likely, based on that. Even though, again, he played well at times when he was in, got to figure he may be the odd man out. P.J. Williams, unless he's going to demand a lot on the open market, I don't see it. You know, he's a guy that maybe they could bring back. And I wouldn't put out of the question drafting another cornerback, you know, especially a corner that can play on the outside, because that's been their Achilles heel. They have a lot of guys that can play the slot position, but not a lot of guys that can swing outside and go man-to-man.
I think Patrick Robinson is going to be the man out. That he will go. P.J. Williams will stay. Garner Johnson can play corner.
Yes, he can.
And I think it's either going to be Eli Apple or Janoris Jenkins. One of them stays, one of them goes, and I don't think they have decided yet.
Right. And, of course, Jenkins, when you look at his career, obviously much more skins on the wall than an Eli Apple, but Eli Apple's a younger player, no doubt. Let's head back to the phone lines. Tom is in Metairie. Tom, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Tom.
Hey, guys, I have 2 questions for you. If the Saints would have made it to the Super Bowl, do you think they would have beat KC? And secondly, I don't think Breeze would go anywhere besides New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I don't know why he wouldn't give us the discount this last year and let us go get some players to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
See what you guys think about that. I'll hang up. Thanks.
Tom, thanks. Guys, first the Kansas City Chiefs and the New Orleans Saints. Who do you like if they would have been that matchup?
I think the Saints would have won. The way Patrick Mahomes struggled in the first 3 quarters, I thought Robert Saleh let him off the hook. I thought he kind of went to the prevent defense,
Right.
and I think Dennis Allen would have been more aggressive and tried to keep him off balance. I think they would have been able, the way Mahomes started the game, I think the Saints would have been able to beat him.
And I'll second that. I don't think the score would have been like a large margin. If the Saints win, it would have probably been like a 4-point victory. The beginning of that game, it's very tight because it kind of makes me look at the Saints in the 49ers game, and it was a 2-point game. But I do think the Saints' offense would have ran up the score like in that time frame, and then Mahomes would have been Mahomes in the second half. And I think we probably have like maybe a 4-point victory, like a 44-40 win.
Right.
Something of that nature.
Guys, Breeze has already said he's only playing here or he's not playing at all. So we know he's coming back. The question is hometown discount. Man, I tell you, it might be his last contract. I mean, do you give some money back to try to build around you, or are you trying to get the last deal?
Negotiations are an ugly thing,
Oh.
and if I'm the general manager, I look at Drew Brees and I tell him, I say, look, we appreciate everything you've done here, but we didn't win the Super Bowl last year. So we have to go out and get more pieces. We do not have enough money to pay you what you want. So if you want to come back, you've got to take less. And I don't think the Saints can play. He needs to give them a
He's a
discount.
tough negotiator, isn't he?
You got to be. You want to win. You got to be.
Yes.
That's to the point. That's something, because this is something we've been on the Super Bowl ride for about 3 years, and it was close these last 3 years. Now, look at the Super Bowl winners now, and look at the top dogs in the NFL. You have Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson. You're looking at more of the mobile quarterback now as opposed to your traditional pocket passer. Right. So let's take less. Let's give it one more year, but we got to start looking towards the future. But, I mean, he's definitely top dog for sure.
Mark Metairie. Mark, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Mark.
Thank you, sir. How you doing?
Doing fine, Mark.
Great. You know, my motto is defense win games, offense entertain.
Okay.
Now, normally when you see a mobile quarterback, it's simply because the offensive line, breaks down most likely. But when you have a solid offensive line, they do real well. Just take Teddy Bridgewater. The offensive line played real well, and Teddy was a smart quarterback the way he was picking his receivers, and they played team ball.
Right.
And it was unbelievable.
Right. Mark, I'm running out of time. Your point.
And look, I like Drew Brees. I like him very much. But it's time for him to step on the side and let somebody else take this team into a different.
Thank you for the call, Mark. Sorry, we're running out of time here. Like Drew Brees, should he move on and retire, or should he come back for one more year?
I think he should retire, and I think Teddy Bridgewater should be the starting quarterback next year. He gives him the best chance. He gives him the best chance to win.
We're out of time. Come back one more year, Drew. Come on, coach, one more year. Coach, player, and let Teddy go ahead and take the wheel, baby.
I think Brees should come back for one more year. Hopefully you can coach Teddy Bridgewater into sticking around for 1 year and then being the heir apparent and taking over there. Well, you're a tough one.
I'll build the statue
tough.
for the guy.
You are tough, man.
I will build the statue.
I don't want to get a negotiation with you. You are tough.
We'll talk after
There you go. Jay Hardgrave of ESPN 100.3, Marlon Favorite, Inside the Trenches podcast. Catch it on the iHeartRadio app. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television, 9 p.m. every Friday night. Make sure you check us out also online at ericasher.com, where you can see all the previous episodes of this program. Our YouTube channel for WLAE-TV is also a way to catch this show, as well as I've posted on our social media pages, so you can check it out there. Also, don't forget, catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2 in the iHeartRadio app. That's noon to 2 weekdays. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com, the iHeartRadio app. And, of course, as always, want to thank our great underwriters of our program, our guest tonight, Jay Hardgrave, and also Marlon Favorite. And, of course, the folks here at WLAE-TV do a great job. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Naila Jones, Alex Jacones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Eric Asher. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.